folded away with infinite love and care. The rough camel wool cloak had lain for decades inside a case, wrought from the finest silver, nestled inside 2 iron boxes, and the massive padlocked doors guarding the Khairka-e-Sharif shrine's inner sanctum. The Prophet Muhammad himself, the pious believed, had worn that cloak as he rode the winged horse Burak on the night of Miraj, ascending to the heavens. Legend held the cloak's mere presence had restored the sight of the blind. The mute walked away speaking. Then, in 1994, the one-eyed cleric Mullah Omar took the cloak from inside the shrine and waved it before the thousands who had assembled to witness the birth of his war to build the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Ecstatic crowds fought to touch the relic, the journalist Norimitsu Onishi has recorded. Some of the more frenzied collapsed. Earlier this week, Mullah Omar's elusive successor, Hibatullah Akhundzada, delivered his own anticlimactic version of that historic speech. In his Eid message, delivered bizarrely with his back turned to the crowd and cameras kept well away, Hibatullah congratulated Afghanistan's people for their, I quote, victory, freedom and success. Last year, Islamic Emirate authorities released audio tape of a speech Hibatullah had delivered at the Hakimiyya seminary. Cameras on that occasion too were not allowed. A student at the seminary said he was so overjoyed by Hibatullah's visit that he, and I'm quoting, forgot to look at his face. The curious circumstances have many asking if the Islamic Emirates Amir-ul-Momineen, self-proclaimed commander of all pious Muslims across the world, is actually alive, or even whether his leadership is just a fiction invented to veil deep internal dissensions. Few biographical details have emerged on the man claimed to have led the Taliban through the 5 critical years leading up to its defeat of the United States military and the establishment of the Second Islamic Emirate. Born either in 1960 or 1961 to Muhammad Hassan Akhund, a village cleric from Safid Rawan in Kandahar's Panjwai Plateau, Hibatullah migrated with the family across the border to Quetta after the Soviet invasion. Through the 1980s, Hibatullah is thought to have attended seminaries run for Afghan refugees in Quetta. It's been claimed that he fought with the Hizb-e-Islami of the jihadist warlord Muhammad Yunus Khalis against the Soviet Union. For a time, some accounts suggest, Hibatullah served the Taliban working as an enforcer of hijab and beard norms in the province of Farah with the notorious Amar bil Maruf wa Nahi Anil Munkar, the Ministry for the Enforcement of Virtue and Suppression of Vice. Later, he is said to have worked as a religious studies instructor at a Taliban-run seminary in Kandahar. Then, after the destruction of the Islamic Emirate in the wake of 9/11, Hibatullah fled back to Pakistan. He served, according to credible Afghan accounts, at the Al-Hajj Mosque in Balochistan, located at Kuchlak near Quetta. The mosque is reported to have been set up by Alam Muhammad Hasni, a businessman with interests in the transport sector, which the Taliban used to control or make money from. Al-Hajj Seminary is thought to have recruited cadre for the Taliban, but contemporary research never flagged Heibatullah as a leader of significance in the jihadist group's Quetta-based council or other governing bodies. Then, in the summer of 2015, the Taliban finally admitted Mullah Omar had died 2 years earlier, making clear, of course, that multiple statements it had issued in his name, including one calling for peace talks, were utter fabrications. Mullah Akhtar Muhammad Mansoor, the powerful military commander who succeeded Mullah Omar, was killed less than a year later in a United States drone strike. 14 months after his father became Taliban Amir, Hibatullah's own son, Abdur Rahman, was reported to have died when he drove an explosives-laden truck into an Afghan military base in Gereshk. Family members of previous supreme leaders had conducted suicide bombings, but Sheikh Hibatullah has become the first supreme leader whose son sacrificed his own life, a senior Taliban member claimed. Later, in 2019, Hibatullah's brother Ahmadullah was assassinated in a bombing, but there was no sight nor sound of the leader himself. In fact, there's very little to show Hibatullah himself participated even in directing military operations of any kind, even after he became the insurgent group's leader. Several accounts claim he made contributions as a theologian and ideologue, but there's really very little evidence for that proposition either. The scholar Alex Strick van Linschoten has an authoritative compilation of Taliban literature, but even that volume contains just a single contribution by Hibatullah, a 122-page text on the religious education of Taliban insurgents. In the book, Hibatullah reiterates well-established Islamist dogma, asserting that the practice of Islam is only possible, and I quote, through an Islamic government having a caliph or ruler who implements Allah's transmitted law through his government. There's also a small corpus of Taliban official statements issued in Hibatullah's name. We instruct officials of the Islamic Emirate in accordance with the Islamic Sharia to avoid second, third and fourth marriage if there is no need. A written message issued in January 2021 reads, "It is possible the declaration was issued in response to the growing practice of Taliban officials with rural backgrounds taking educated brides in addition to the often illiterate women they had been married to." But there's nothing to show Hibatullah's proscription was taken seriously by his commanders. Events show his Eid call in 2021 for a, quote, Afghan inclusive Islamic system in which all people shall feel a sense of representation was actually ignored by the Taliban itself. The fall of Kabul later that year was followed by a division of power between the southern Afghanistan clerics who held power in the first emirate and the eastern Afghanistan jihadists led by Sirajuddin Haqqani. Few of Hibatullah's ministers, mostly picked from the ranks of first emirate notables, enjoy a lot of real authority within the Taliban either. Take the case of Prime Minister Hassan Akhund. Akhund was described in a now declassified United States intelligence assessment as, I quote, one of the most ineffective and unreasonable Taliban leaders. The clerics around Hibatullah like Chief Justice Abdul Hakim and Minister for Religious Affairs Noor Muhammad Saqib have secured victories on some theological questions like barring educations for girls and hijab, but they have no on-ground power because they have no fighters. Following his appointment, Hibatullah institutionalized the central fissure in the Taliban. He divided control of the military between Sirajuddin Haqqani and Muhammad Yaqub, the son of the slain emirate's patriarch Mullah Omar. Led by Yaqub, military commanders from southern Afghanistan seized control of the Taliban's finances as well as revenue-rich regions like the opium-producing hub of Helmand. Haqqani in turn began waging a war of subversion against the southern Taliban, allowing groups like the Islamic State to operate from his strongholds in the Loya Paktia region. That struggle for power is intensifying, exposing fissures. The symbol of Hibatullah can no longer put a veil over. In March, Haqqani, the target of a $10 million United States bounty, publicly revealed his own face for the first time. This was a barb clearly directed at Hibatullah and the southern leadership he represents. Economic meltdown and swirling tensions with Pakistan over cross-border attacks by jihadists have further eroded the tenuous hold of Hibatullah over the emirate. There have also been local skirmishes with battles breaking out for control of revenues from trade, trucking and mines. For months before the Taliban captured Kabul, rumors swirled that Hibatullah had become a victim of the COVID-19 pandemic and died at a hospital in Pakistan. The proof for this claim hasn't emerged. The Taliban's deceit over Mullah Omar's demise makes it plausible to many. There hasn't notably been any explanation of why Hibatullah feels reluctant to show his face in public when everyone else in the Taliban leadership does so. Likely, Hibatullah was always intended to represent only a simulacrum of power, not the real thing. The warlords behind his throne are now preparing himself for the real struggle to come. I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm National Security Editor of The Print.